Minutes today. I hope when you came in, you're able to pick up an agenda. We'll generally stick to that. My name is Jack Kapp. I am the chief of EPD's watershed. We are talking about today, Senate Bill 101 was passed by the legislature this session, signed into law by the governor on May 6th. Once that happened, we got really busy trying to come up with a draft rule that's in response to that statute, because as you'll see in a minute that the time frame that they gave us in the statute for doing this work is pretty tight. So we got here today as quickly as we could. The purpose here today is really to give people a baseline understanding of what's going on, and then to help facilitate them giving us input, because the outcome here that we want is a really good, effective rule that protects the environment. And so we're here listening. We have a draft rule that serves the purpose of helping to facilitate that input. We have not made any decisions. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Glenn Barron, unless I missed anything. I don't think I did. And then we'll proceed. Thank you again, everybody.
Thank you. I'm Glenn Barron. I'm the manager of the Non-Point Source Program. And I'd like to start with an overview of the Erosion and Sedimentation Act of 1975. So this is the act that Senate Bill 101 amended. The Erosion and Sedimentation Act of 1975, also known as the ENS Act, it is a state law. It's a state law, and it supports compliance with the Clean Water Act, which is the Federal Clean Water Act, as well as the Georgia Water Quality Control Act. And it does a lot of things, but among the things it does is protect buffers. Buffers are generally 25 feet around state waters. The Erosion and Sedimentation Act provides responsibilities and authorities to both Georgia EPD and to local governments, which are called in the Act local issuing authorities, or LIAs. If you have a project that will intrude on the buffer under the Erosion ENS Act, you must consult with your local issuing authority, or EPD if you're not regulated by the local issuing authority, to determine if the buffer applicability. You then must apply to EPD for a variance, and this variance includes an application. The application must have a site map, a description of the buffer intrusion, a description of a mitigation or revegetation plan, an erosion, sediment, and pollution control plan prepared by a design professional, and a variety of other things with that application. It also, in order to be granted a variance, you have to meet a certain criteria. So there's a list of criteria in our rules that you have. And so some examples of those criteria would be that the project by its nature must be located in the buffer. That would be like a water take point. The project is for water quality restoration or enhancement. It's necessary to gain access to a property for water and sewer line or utility line crossings, and other criteria as such. If the project doesn't meet one of these criteria, then you can't get a variance. And all of these buffer projects do require restoration and minimization of impacts. And some criteria may require the purchase of mitigation credits. And this is described in more detail on our website within our mitigation guidance document. So after you submit your application, or the applicant, EPD then reviews the application and the plans and provides any comments to the applicant necessary. And then there's a public notice period. So both EPD and the applicant solicit public comments on the application. EPD requires then that the applicant address all relevant public comments, and then EPD reviews the comments, the applicant's responses, and makes a decision on the application. And this decision is challengeable under state law. And it's also important to note that some particular kinds of buffer intrusions are exempt from these requirements, such as drainage and roadway drainage structures and certain line crossings.
Thanks, Glenn. We'll have a short overview of the Coastal Marshlands Protection Act by Coastal Resources Division.
Thank you. My name is Carl Burgess. I work with the Coastal Resource Division. I'm the manager of the Marsh and Shore Management Program. Projects that are typically permitted if they are found by the Coastal Marshlands Protection Committee to be in the public interest. Such public interest consideration includes the following evaluation. The first is whether or not a proposed project creates an unreasonable obstruction to or alteration of the natural flow of navigable waters. Number two would be whether the proposed project creates an unreasonable increase of erosion, shoaling, or stagnant of areas of water. And number three would be whether the proposed project creates an unreasonable interference of the conservation of marine life, wildlife, and other resources. Types of projects typically proposed and approved include community docks, marinas, bridges, dredging, and filling. But it should be noted that private docks are generally exempt from the Coastal Marshlands protection. This slide here provides basically the two methods described in the statute used to determine the jurisdiction of the Coastal Marshlands Protection Act. The first is when staff uses indicators such as the 14 plants specifically identified in the law, and the second is specified elevation of 5.6 mean tide level. The majority of the time, the presence and density of the 14 jurisdictional plant species is used in lieu of the elevation survey, which in turn, the elevation survey is usually a lot more costly for the applicant. It should be noted that Coastal Resource Division staff does provide these jurisdictional determinations at no cost. And finally, here's just a brief little diagram showing how staff delineates the coastal marshlands based on those 14 plants and other indicators. Once the property has been delineated by staff, it's the responsibility of the property owner to have that jurisdiction line placed on a survey. The survey is then provided to CRD staff for verification.
But what I am showing you is straight out of the statute. 25-foot buffer along coastal marshlands, except where the director determines to allow a variance that is at least as protective of the environment. And so that really is where EPD comes into play in all of this. Is there are some things, as Glenn mentioned in his overview, and he'll go over in some more detail, that we need to intrude upon that buffer to have a road or a drainway structure or something like that to get to our daily lives. And so that is the process, the regulatory process that's created for EPD to review those applications and make a determination. And so that forms the bulk of the rulemaking that we're presenting here today. The other ones to note, really Roman numeral 2 and Roman numeral 3 really are in the statute, are probably not very, will not come up often or if at all. But maintenance of a currently serviceable structure would be exempt. So people could do maintenance on structures that are already present within the buffer. Where there's a drainage structure, roadway drainage structure is constructed or maintained. The landward side of any currently serviceable shoreline stabilization structure, and then maintenance of structures such as a golf course pond or a stormwater impoundment. Paragraph B just reiterates the point: you cannot disturb the buffer unless it's allowed. So it is a violation of state law. And will be a violation of our rules if somebody disturbs the buffer without going through the proper channels.